Indiana Newsdesk is made possible in part by Smithville Fiber Internet, streaming TV, home security and automation in Southern Indiana. More information at smithville.com. Maller Grodner Attorneys, providing legal services to clients and the community. Understanding, expertise, results. Bloomington and Indianapolis. lawmg.com. IU Center for Rural Engagement, extending IU Bloomington resources to improve Hoosier lives in partnership with communities and organizations. rural.indiana.edu. And by WTIU members. Thank you.
Coming up on Indiana Newsdesk. College athletes are earning money off their name, likeness, and image thanks to a 2021 NCAA rule.
I mean, anytime you can, obviously, make money, that's a great part of it.
But the lure of riches has become part of the recruiting game. Elite college athletes are earning in the seven figures. Bedford is down to one hospital after St. Vincent Dunn closed last month. Losing medical care is a trend affecting rural areas across the state.
We've seen some not closed but cut back on services. There have been a lot of hospitals that have cut back on obstetric services.
Consolidation in the healthcare industry is only exacerbating the problem. And we look ahead to this year's General Assembly session at the Statehouse, which begins Monday. We'll have these stories plus the latest news from across the state right now on Indiana Newsdesk. Welcome to Indiana Newsdesk. I'm Joe Wren. Governor Eric Holcomb wants to spend more than $5 billion new dollars in Indiana's next budget on everything from education to public health and economic development initiatives. Holcomb unveiled his 2023 agenda this week, and as Indiana Public Broadcasting's Brandon Smith reports, it's the most ambitious of his 6 years in office.
While Holcomb's proposed agenda spans a variety of subjects, he says they all rest on a foundation of good government.
In terms of public safety, in terms of public health, in terms of public education, in terms of community development, in terms of infrastructure connections.
The big ticket items are spending more than $1 billion new dollars on K-12 education, boosting public health funding by more than $300 million, and spending $500 million on READY, the governor's economic development initiative. The next step? Getting lawmakers to go along with all of that.
We think that they're not just legitimate, we think that they're needed, which helps us not be cocky about it, but confident that we can be persuasive.
But while Holcomb's budget proposal represents a major increase in spending over the last state budget, it appears that it doesn't quite keep up with increases in inflation over the last 2 years. So are state government and schools going to be left still trying to catch up to the pressures of inflation?
I think Indiana has done one of the better jobs, quite frankly, in the country in addressing not just inflation, but a potential recession by our fiscal stewardship, making sure that we're living within our means.
Holcomb's proposals also include eliminating textbook fees for all public and charter school students, increasing the Indiana State Police starting salary to $70,000 a year, and spending $75 million on trail expansion and land conservation.
We're joined now by Statehouse reporter Brandon Smith for more on this year's session, which begins Monday. Hello, Brandon. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Joe.
All right, so how realistic is it that Holcomb will get what he wants in this session?
Well, I think lawmakers will support a fair amount of what the governor is proposing. What's less likely is that he'll get all of the funding amounts he wants, right? So I could see the legislature backing the READY grants, public health funding, mental health funding, economic development dollars in some form, significant education increases, but likely not all at the levels that Holcomb has proposed.
So we heard in your story that education, a big priority for the governor.
Right. Well, K-12 education alone accounts for more than 50% of the state budget. If you add in higher education, it's closer to 60%. So education is always a priority, but particularly these last few years, increasing teacher salaries has been a major push of the governor's, and getting those salaries higher again is part of this funding proposal.
Holcomb is also proposing a big boost to public health. Can you tell us more?
Right, it's the result of a 2-year commission that he formed to study the public health system. This really comes out of the pandemic, shining a brighter spotlight on how poorly funded that system is here in Indiana. Holcomb has also stressed, though, that this is not a state takeover of the public health system.
This is in an effort to support that government closer to you, and you got to be involved from a local perspective as well and hold them accountable.
So Brandon, another area of focus was economic development with more money for READY grants made available. I talked to many mayors. They love this program.
Absolutely. It's incredibly popular among local government and private sector leaders, as well, quite frankly, as a lot of state lawmakers. Now, can the legislature afford to put the $500 million into it that the governor has asked for? Maybe not, but there's little doubt in my mind that they will put more money into it this year.
So now the Republicans and Democrats haven't released their agendas yet, but what do you expect to be some of their priorities this coming week?
Well, there's definitely some crossover with the governor from both parties, quite frankly. Everything begins with the budget. Education, again, is top of mind within that. Mental health supports is clearly a priority of the Republican caucuses and long has been for Democratic caucuses. Beyond that, we'll find out soon.
All right, Brandon, we look forward to your coverage beginning Monday. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe.
Well, Democrats are close to their first official candidate to run for governor in former state school superintendent Jennifer McCormick. McCormick was an educator, local school principal, and superintendent before she won a stunning upset victory as a Republican in 2016 to become state superintendent of public instruction. But she often clashed with GOP supermajorities in the legislature over education policy. And months after leaving the job, McCormick changed her party affiliation. This week, she began inviting people to donate to her exploratory committee, further fueling the speculation that she will become Democrats' first official candidate. Well, Wednesday was the first day candidates could officially file to be on the ballot for the May primary, and 3 Democrats immediately jumped in the race for Bloomington mayor. Carrie Thompson, Susan Sandberg, and Don Griffin are looking to succeed Mayor John Hamilton, who announced last month he will not seek a 3rd term. Now, Thompson is the executive director of IU Center for Rural Engagement. Sandberg is the city council president. Griffin was deputy mayor under Hamilton before resigning to focus on the race. Now, Terre Haute's Duke Bennett announced Thursday he'll run for a 5th term as mayor. Now, if he wins and serves a full term, Bennett would hold the mayor's office for 20 years. He says it's a decision he doesn't take lightly.
I felt like I really wanted to give it another shot so that we could, get some things done that we've been planning for a while. We've got the financial resources now in front of us to do a lot of different things.
And Bennett says the new convention center and police station and landing the casino are big accomplishments that took years to complete. A Republican, Bennett was first elected in 2007 by a narrow margin, but won re-election in 2011 by more than 3,000 votes. He won in 2015 and 2019 by just a few hundred votes. The NCAA's name, image, and likeness policy helped make national headlines on Christmas when Indiana basketball player Anthony Leal surprised his sister Lauren by paying off her student debt for Christmas.
I don't even know how much that is.
I do. It's 0 now.
Like, actually?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yep.
Oh. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Oh my gosh. I know you.
It's been a year and a half since the policy went into effect, and student athletes are cashing in. But luring and keeping elite athletes means the universities need to have NIL opportunities lined up that make a lot of money. So when Ohio State football coach Ryan Day told a group of Columbus business owners he needed $13 million in NIL money to keep his roster intact, people took notice. Pat Bean reports.
Ryan Day's pronouncement was an eye-opener. Indiana coach Tom Allen later said any coach would love to have half the money available for their athletes to collect. On a weekly radio show late in the season, Allen spoke at length about NIL, lamenting how athletes making money has impacted the balance of recruiting. He said at the start of the season, 8 Hoosier football players were making about $150,000 each.
That's how the game is played. And if you're not in the game and you're not on the train, you're going to get left out and run over.
But schools like Indiana are getting run over by the Ohio States and Alabamas of the football world. Alabama coach Nick Saban said quarterback Bryce Young earned more than $1 million in NIL endorsements before playing his first game 2 years ago. He's making 3 times that now. It's those deals that inflate what the average athlete makes, which is around $3,700, according to Open Doors, a leading NIL collective.
The concern I have is that sort of a great expectations concern, that student athletes think that they read stories like that make news, the University of Texas quarterback that gets a deal with a Lamborghini dealership, and that's the exception.
Les Morris started a name, image, and likeness course this fall in IU's media school. It teaches students about the underpinnings of the policy, how to work with NIL partners, and advise student athletes. He says a whole cottage industry has sprung up to manage the complicated world of NIL collectives.
There are now intermediary companies called collectives, which are sort of clearinghouses to receive the funds and pay the student athletes.
IU is a partner with Open Doors, which runs the Indiana Marketplace, a one-stop shop-all where Hoosier athletes can be pitched NIL opportunities, make deals, and get paid. Universities cannot fund collectives, but they can fundraise for them and market them. On Open Doors, each athlete's profile, NIL options, and contact information are listed.
IU has at least 3 or 4 people whose some of their responsibility is NIL in the athletic department. Then they work with various outside groups on marketing and also on strategic initiatives for NIL.
Social media can be a big moneymaker. Open Doors said during the first 6 months of the policy, a TikTok post could be worth around $900, an Instagram post around $500, and a tweet around $75. IU women's basketball star Grace Berger says most of the time businesses reach out to her for a product endorsement or an appearance.
If me or my teammates have an interest in a local business, we'll reach out to them. And we found that businesses are really, really open and excited about doing deals with us when we reach out to them first.
For the most part, collectives are for profit. One that's not is Bloomington-based Hoosiers for Good. It solicits donations, then compensates athletes for their time supporting more than 20 charities.
So we developed a charitable incubator program to allow student athletes who are passionate about a specific cause to submit proposals to us about specific charities they want to impact and what they're going to do to impact them. And we could enter into NIL agreements with those student athletes, help them find their voice and raise awareness for that specific cause.
This week, Hoosiers for Good announced an anonymous donor's $1 million pledge challenge had been matched, bringing in a total of $2 million new dollars available to use on athletes partnered with the organization.
We want to get as many student athletes involved and making sure we're paying fair market value. We're never going to be the organization that's bankrolling a $30 million football budget.
Berger is one of the more than 24 IU athletes partnered with Hoosiers for Good.
I mean, anytime you can, obviously, make money, that's a great part of it. But, it's kind of a double benefit in that you make money while helping the community, while getting out there in the community. And the Hoosiers for Good, something like that is something that, I would have been completely willing to do and excited about doing, even if there was no money involved.
There was no NIL money to be had when Berger was being recruited to Indiana. Now, what NIL opportunities are available and how much they're worth plays a role in recruiting.
When you can go in to an athlete's home and kind of show them where the current athletes on their team, have gotten deals from, what kind of money they're bringing in, obviously that just gives them an advantage over smaller schools or other schools that might not have that community interest or market size.
Berger is in her 5th season at IU. She says NIL money makes it easier for athletes like her to take advantage of an extra year of eligibility granted by the NCAA due to the pandemic.
You definitely see it kind of being a reason that a lot of these people, a lot of these top athletes are staying around, obviously for the experience of playing the sport, but also to, make some money while they're doing it and really set them up for their future and life after sports.
For Indiana Newsdesk, I'm Pat Bean.
Open Source says it expects total NIL earnings for college athletes to exceed $1 billion this year. Following a 2-month decline and a year of weak sentiment, the Ag Economy Barometer closed out the year on a more positive note. Farmers were more optimistic in both their current situation and future expectations. Clayton Baumgarth has this report.
The Ag Barometer is a monthly telephone survey that gathers information from 400 U.S. agricultural producers. Michael Langemeyer, a professor of agricultural economics at Purdue, says the increase came as a bit of a surprise.
It certainly was kind of a surprising year in many ways. And that's because when you look at the supply and demand fundamentals for corn and soybeans and some of the other commodities, a lot changed, from the beginning of 22 to the end of 22.
The heightened price of crop and livestock helped to keep a year marred by expensive fuel and fertilizer from being harmful to agriculture. Looking to the future, it's difficult to gauge where exactly prices will go in 2023, but for now, it looks like higher prices are here to stay.
Right now, when you look at the costs, whether that be feed costs for animal production or input costs for crop producers, they're very high, and I just can't see a scenario where that's necessarily going to change, or particularly change rapidly.
For Indiana Newsdesk, I'm Clayton Baumgarth.
The war in the Ukraine, climate change, and COVID in China all have a massive effect on input cost in agriculture. While those don't look to change anytime soon, farmers are at least breathing a sigh of relief for 2022. Coming up next on Indiana Newsdesk. Bedford is the latest rural community to lose some access to health care when one of its hospitals closed last month. And new standards for teaching science that include climate change is boosting the state's academic profile. These stories and more right here on Indiana Newsdesk.
We care about things that affect the lives of every American.
We are there at the front line
to get to the heart of what really matters in every issue.
This country has not seen this in 80 years.
This extraordinary moment in American history.
You're making such a huge impact.
Trust is at the heart of what we do.
Public television's mission is to create a more informed and engaged public with inspiring programs, compelling stories, and trustworthy news. And we can't do it without a team of professional journalists, media specialists, engineers, and administrators making it happen both on the air and behind the scenes. Want to work for WTIU? Find the latest job postings on our website. Details at WTIU.org/jobs.
Welcome back to Indiana Newsdesk. A new study suggests humans could face a reproductive crisis due to a steep decline in sperm count and male fertility overall during the past 50 years. Ethan Sandweiss has this report.
The recent health study suggests that male sperm counts have declined by more than 50% globally over the past 50 years. Often reported as the canary in the coal mine, male infertility is an overall marker of men's health, marking an individual's cancer risk, physical health, and morbidity. While fertility and urology experts note that this is not new information, this medical review provides concrete and updated facts regarding the decline in sperm count on a global level.
We're actually having sperm or fertility parameters declining in men at about greater than 2.5% per year. So it's pretty alarming. And I think that most reproductive andrologists like myself would agree that we definitely are seeing sperm and fertility parameters in men declining. The question is what's causing it?
Experts note the decline in male fertility cannot be attributed to just one factor, as the combination of several environmental, lifestyle, and medical conditions are at play.
More patients, more people, especially in the U.S., are overweight. They're tobacco smokers. They have stress. They're not sleeping well. They live sedentary lifestyles. All of these things that impact fertility, as well as all the chemicals being used nowadays.
Fertility can also be affected by excessive alcohol and drug use, environmental and occupational exposures, and medical conditions such as obesity, diabetes, high blood pressure, and others. James Donahue is a fertility specialist at Family Beginnings in Indianapolis. He notes several patients in Indiana work in factories where high temperatures can affect sperm health. Donahue notes even healthy individuals with no medical history can have a low sperm count, which is why getting tested is an informative first step.
You can be completely healthy, running marathons or whatever, but still have an issue with it. So it's really important, that people do get checked. And I think that the testing, it gives us a lot of information and tells us where to go.
For Indiana Newsdesk, I'm Ethan Sandweiss.
Testing consists of getting a semen analysis and a blood test that checks the male patient's hormonal panel. If abnormalities are found, both doctors say there are behavioral lifestyle changes that can help address the issues. Well, last month, Ascension St. Vincent Dunn Medical Center in Bedford closed its doors to the public, leaving IU Health as the sole emergency care provider in the city. WTIU's Clayton Baumgarth digs into the larger issue of medical care in rural areas.
Imagine having severe chest pains in your home, then having to drive 45 minutes to the nearest hospital to see if you're having a heart attack. For many Hoosiers, this isn't a hypothetical. It's exactly how those living in rural areas live every day. After operating in Bedford for nearly 80 years, Ascension St. Dunn Medical Center closed on December 16th. And while IU Health Bedford is still open, that hospital will be strained taking on a new influx of patients when the flu, RSV, and COVID hit with full force.
We have brought on additional staff. For instance, in our walk-in clinic, we are now staffing that on Sunday. We have Sunday afternoon hours. We didn't previously, and we're staffing that with an additional provider.
Bailey has experience working in healthcare at rural areas. For him, this issue is nothing out of the ordinary.
We've seen some not closed, but cut back on services. There have been a lot of hospitals that have cut back on obstetric services, and then other programs that maybe weren't pulling their weight financially. So it is a struggle for rural facilities.
Crawford County is another area in Indiana that struggled with specialized medical care. People there have seen firsthand the issues that come with not having a well-equipped medical provider nearby.
We, in the last couple of years, have opened a second EMS station on the south side of the county so that we can respond to things quicker, because it makes it so urgent to get there as quickly as you possibly can, because you have to transfer somebody outside of the county for almost any situation.
One of the main problems rural areas face is attracting talent. That requires having good amenities, but having good amenities requires talent. It's a constant battle of asking which comes first, the chicken or the egg.
You need those kind of amenities in order to attract businesses and in order to attract workforce. But in order to attract those type of amenities, you have to have the population base. So it's kind of, you're trying to do both at the same time.
Some ideas floating around to help these areas are increased access to telehealth and a rotating roster of specialists that visit communities in need. For Belcher, a hybrid of those two ideas could be the most accessible for many communities.
If we had a brick and mortar location to where you could meet with a general practitioner, say nurse practitioner or something like that, and then they can pull in specialists as needed, it could certainly cut down on how many trips you have to make out of the area.
Unfortunately, the biggest hurdle rural areas face is simply that less population equals less income for hospitals.
There are just fewer people in rural areas. And if you think about the objectives of a hospital or a clinic, they're going to want to make money. And you're going to make money if you have your clinics and your hospitals in places where there are more people.
The consolidation of the healthcare industry has only exacerbated the issue. For years, large healthcare organizations have been buying into private care hospitals across the country.
And then those larger healthcare systems operate as a system. Their objective is to try to do what is best for their healthcare system rather than what is best for X small city.
This is arguably what happened in Bedford. St. Vincent, part of Ascension, which is based in St. Louis, bought the former community hospital 12 years ago. Ascension did not respond for comment, but did share a statement with media saying, after exploring the options available, including conducting an unsuccessful search for a buyer for the hospital, it was clear that other providers with a larger presence in the region are better positioned to efficiently serve the residents of Bedford and neighboring communities. In other words, Ascension is leaving it to IU Health to serve the Bedford community to the best of its ability. For Indiana Newsdesk, I'm Clayton Baumgarth.
Indiana is on track to improve the way it teaches climate change. New state science standards that require more climate education will go into full effect by next school year. But Indiana Public Broadcasting's Rebecca Theo reports an expert says Indiana teachers may need to do more to prepare for those changes.
2 years ago, Indiana received a D for how it teaches climate from the National Center for Science Education and the Texas Freedom Network Education Fund. Since then, the state added more climate requirements to its science standards and extra environmental science standards for high schoolers. Now, Indiana would probably earn a B or an A-, says Glenn Branch, deputy director for the NCSE.
It would be among the top 10 in the country now. And that's a huge achievement of which Hoosiers can be proud.
But Branch says just having the standards is not enough. Many teachers will need to get training to get them up to speed. States like Washington, Maine, and California have passed laws to fund those efforts. Branch says without good climate education, Indiana students might not perform well in state and national science tests, and that could make Indiana less attractive to certain industries. For Indiana Public Broadcasting, I'm Rebecca Thiel.
According to a Yale Climate Opinion Survey, it's estimated that more than 70% of adult Hoosiers believe kids should be taught about the causes, consequences, and potential solutions to global warming. Well, don't let the holiday cold snap fool you. Winters in Indiana are getting warmer on average. That's according to the independent research and reporting collaboration Climate Central. The average winter temperature has gone up for every Indiana city studied since 1970. Parts of the state saw an average increase varying from 2 degrees all the way up to 4 to 5 degrees. Climate Central says warmer winters can lead to lower fruit crop yields and more disease-carrying pests like mosquitoes and ticks. Well, that's the end of this program, but our work continues online as we cover the news throughout the week at WTIUnews.org. Have a great weekend.
Indiana Newsdesk is made possible in part by Smithville Fiber Internet, streaming TV, home security and automation in Southern Indiana. More information at smithville.com. Maller Grodner Attorneys, providing legal services to clients and the community. Understanding, expertise, results. Bloomington and Indianapolis. LawMG.com. IU Center for Rural Engagement, extending IU Bloomington resources to improve Hoosier lives in partnership with communities and organizations. Rural.indiana.edu. And by WTIU members. Thank you.